Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. But pause the Alana and welcome Grant Garry. What's really cool is that I went from never talking to him to talking to him multiple times a day, every day for the last 5 days. So it's pretty cool that he's here. He's super cool and like very funny and loves singing. And he likes long walks on the beach and is an award-winning filmmaker, actor, and singer. He is director of the documentary Meet Me Where I Am, which is available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and YouTube movies. He recently starred as Beast in Disney's Beauty and the Beast at the I don't know how to say this. How do I say it?
San Luis Obispo.
Obispo. Ah, that's what you were saying. Opera. It's also super cool because he has other really awesome credits, including NCIS Los Angeles, Legally Blonde, the musical, Black Cat, Night of the Living Deb. I don't know what that is, but that sounds fun. Sweeney Todd, Cinderella, and he currently hosts the show, the Where I Am podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And in fact, he really does meet us where we are because Kara Sanchez, the editor-in-chief of Get Griefy, and I were both in LA at the same time. She's from Chicago. I'm from British Columbia, Canada. And Grant came all the way from where he lives near where we are, and we podcasted in a hotel room, and he met us where we are. So here we are again, meeting where we are on Zoom.
That was an amazing introduction. Thank
Well,
you.
yes, you're welcome. I mean, it's an amazing introduction for someone who does amazing things in this world. And what I love is how much you love singing, and maybe you could do a little bit of, you know, Beast.
I I told you the other day, don't ask me to do a cappella. But
Yeah.
on that same note, we were talking about bands that we like, and I
Hmm.
I mentioned the Goo Goo Dolls and how many hits they have,
Yeah.
and I neglected to bring up the song Iris in that conversation because Iris was written for the movie City of Angels, which is like very much a grief like film.
Yeah.
And those first like few lyrics of that song um are so beautiful. Um Now I'm forgetting them. It goes um and I'd give up forever to touch you. 'Cause I know that you feel me somehow. And then he says, you're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be. And I think that's like so beautiful. And we were talking about how in these moments like that people experience, like in these hard seasons, in these like grief moments, that music can bring out, that can evoke those like feelings that are inside of us and help us like connect more, I think, with our feelings. I could be totally wrong, but that's just my interpretation of it, my understanding of it.
I love that. And first of all, that song is amazing.
I really digressed quickly, didn't I?
No, where did you digress to? We're talking about beautiful songs and you're singing, and I think it's really cool that you said that, and it's also funny, and this is what I'm about to do is a complete digression, but we spoke about our favorite movies, and
Yeah.
this is crazy. So we were, just for those of you who aren't following along, Kara and I and Alana were at an Oscars gifting lounge in LA handing out copies of our most recent book, Resilient AF: Stories of Resilience Volume 2, and our Resilient AF sweaters to celebrities and media. And we had this one really interesting run-in. And this is funny because I shared that my favorite movie is Empire Records when we recorded your podcast. And you haven't watched it yet, but you will. You have to.
Yes.
So I shared that. And then after I went back to kind of look up who some of the celebrities that came through are. And this one guy came through wearing sunglasses, very like eccentric, came to our table. We shared our story. he didn't want a book. He's like, I love this. I'm not gonna read it. I'm not gonna take it. Love your sweater, but I won't wear it, so I'm gonna save you one. And then Kara tried to give him a get griefy sticker for his water bottle. He's like, that's negative energy. Everything is energy. I don't want that. And so, but he was really interested in my necklace, my neck stone, not my neck. My neck itself isn't very interesting, but the jewelry around it is. Anyways, it was a very interesting, like, I'll remember this encounter forever. But also, this person looked so familiar, but I was like, I don't know who this person is. And after I looked him up, and he played one of the main guys in Empire Records.
There you go.
There you go.
Everything's connected.
Everything's connected. But and that leads us to a great place. So I've been recommended to chat with you by multiple people. And you even reached out about Meet Me Where I Am through your on social media. And so I watched it and I recommended it to my sister, Alana, who is a palliative social worker. And she's like, "Oh my God, Blair, I've seen it. It's so good." And like it was just so funny because like again, she's in Winnipeg, Manitoba and was looking for resources and found you.
That's amazing. Like I know you mentioned that the other she mentioned that to me. I couldn't believe that she had already because I just feel like I'm like, is anyone watching this film?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's
Alana
out
in
in the
Winnipeg
world.
is.
And it's just like that's just like I love hearing that people are seeking out a resource such as Meet Me Where I Am to maybe better their understanding or to help others, and that is like why we made the film.
So let those people know out there listening and watching, like, what is Meet Me Where I Am?
Meet Me Where I Am is it's a documentary about individual stories of love and loss and finding purpose and finding meaning in your life after loss. And I always like preface that with just because just making meaning doesn't mean you have to start some big organization. It doesn't mean you have to write a book. It doesn't mean you have to make a film. Meaning can be those little things, those little daily things as you move forward with your loss. Like for some people, it could just be like getting out of bed and like taking a shower that day. Like that's meaningful. The conversation you and I are having right now is meaning, you know, we're doing something, we're part of something right now.
Mhm.
Does it look weird when I'm looking into the camera? I never know.
Look wherever you want. I'm always everywhere.
Like this is me like feeling like I'm looking at you in the eyes, but this probably feels more
So
like I'm
yeah, like
looking.
I'm looking at you in the eyes and I'm looking at the camera in the eye.
Yeah.
Look wherever you want.
So, um, so yeah, I mean, it was almost 2 years of interviews. I think I interviewed about 30 something. Was it 30? Somewhere around there. People, and it was just with every person I learned something new, and I saw a lot of trends as well
Ooh.
in grief, uh, which was interesting. And I talked to Colin Campbell recently, and he was saying how like Colin wrote the book Finding the Words, and which is a great book. And he was saying how I'm like totally gonna butcher what he said, but I kind of found this myself in doing the interviews where there is no like sure there's no like two grievers alike, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but there is for a lot of people, not everyone, but there is sort of this like kind of universal trend where you're in active grief and it feels like you're never going to get out of it. It's the worst thing you've ever experienced in your life. You don't know how you're going to move forward. And then you finally get to a place where you're living with that grief. And now it's like fused with your being more than the initial shock of it. And you get to a place where you carry it with you like every day. And it's just in a different form than it was when it was like very, very fresh. And I think that's common for a lot of people that have gone through it and also put work in to like find their new version of it. Um, does that make any sense at all?
It does 100% because it's a visual of like, this is grief. My hand is in a fist. And then like, this is life. My other hand is touching it. But then as I learn to navigate grief and begin to heal my heart, the grief doesn't get smaller, but it just, life gets bigger around it. And
Yeah,
that's
I
That's how I see it because my grief is still here, but I'm not thinking about it 24/7. I still think about it all the
Mhm.
time and I carry and it's heavy, but I also have now capacity for other things.
Well, think of it like this. Like you and I are both wearing glasses, right?
Hmm.
We're glasses buddies today. And I take off my glasses. I can't see like really well at all. Like let's say my bad eyesight is my grief. And now over time I get this like somewhat of a correction. My eyes are still bad. The bad eyes are still there,
Yeah,
but I'm learning how to move forward with them in a little bit of a different way. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not,
I
but
get it. I get it. I get it. What what were some things that surprised you that you learned from 30 plus interviews?
so I dealt with like a range of grief, different types of losses. I talked to a number of people who had like their children had been murdered, even. And what was so interesting to me was to see the people that felt like they could never forgive their child's killer. And then on the flip side, the people that wanted to forgive them immediately because of maybe like a spiritual or a religious belief, believing that that was a way for them to release whatever they were holding on to regarding their feelings towards it. Um, Another thing, so that was like obviously like very heavy and and um, surprising to hear these. Just it just speaks to how, like for example, like you and your sister have both had the same loss on paper. However, your experiences with that loss are different. Of course they are. So it's always interesting just to hear how one person felt versus the other. Another thing that I always say that was so interesting to me is something Anthony Rapp said, which was you mourn the loss of them, but you're also mourning you and who you were to them, like your relationship as a husband or a brother or a spouse, like just anything, because that goes with them too. And I never really thought of it that way, but the version of you that only knew that version of them is gone now too. And so how do we move forward with that, you know?
Yeah, that's really profound and also so true. And there's a lot of other layers to that too, like mourning what will never be and what you thought will be that won't.
The
It's
the morning the morning what you thought you were gonna have, the grieving a future that you're not gonna have is a really challenging one. You know, people can say like, oh, your wife died. Well, at least you didn't have kids with them. And it's like, well, maybe kids were supposed to be part of that plan. So now you're grieving the family that you thought you were gonna make with this person. Even on a different like scale, like a perhaps a job loss, changing the trajectory of your career, a life that you thought you might have had or were going to have. So there's these like major shifts that occur with with a law, with a major grief, with a major loss.
and I think it's probably interesting for you in this journey to learn about all these different types of loss because a lot of people who, hear grief, they think someone died. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so much more than that. Can you, okay, I'm gonna ask you a personal question. I did recently, well, not recently, but I've done a training with Dr. Claire Bidwell Smith, loved her, and she
Oh
had
yeah.
us do some exercises. And one of them was to list out all of the griefs I can remember. And like it's interesting because this was a while ago and like I still have ones that pop in that are new. I'm like, "Oh, that was a grief. Oh, that was a grief." Can you like remember like as a kid experiencing any type of grief?
It wasn't until I did that same exact exercise that you just mentioned. Not with Claire, I did it with David Kessler. And I told him about it on my podcast that I think that was like the beginning of my grief training was he had us list losses, just
Mhm.
list losses. And I went, "Oh my God." I was like that was grief as a child. And I lost my grandpa when I was 4 years old, and it didn't hit me until later, like what a grief that was, and like how I missed out on more of a relationship with them. Um, I had also, it sounds silly, but I told David, I said we had these pet rabbits, and I don't know why we had pet rabbits as a kid, but we loved them. And they one day they both died, and it was like so traumatic as a child, like because it was just like a fun, lovable like animal that we had as part of our family. It would run around in the backyard with us, and I didn't realize till years later that what I was feeling at that time as a child was grief. And so you kind of like feel for that younger version of yourself.
Hmm.
You just feel for them in a way.
Did you have any adults talk to you about grief when you were a kid? Like when your rabbits died or your grandpa died? And I
I don't
ask
think I
this
heard
because
the,
sorry, I'm interrupting you. I'm
yeah,
asking this because we're the same generation and I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
my answer is.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I ever like heard the word grief. Um, my grandmother passed when I was 15, and I remember thinking like something like the universe messed up. Like, hold on, this isn't supposed to happen this way. And that was very, very shocking. Like that was a very like shocking grief for me. The word grief was like never mentioned. It was like a very like um in our family, it was just like a very like standard, like it was like this happened, then we planned the funeral, and then people brought food over, and it was just a very like structured situation. And then you kind of are made to feel like, oh, once that structure, once those like steps come to an end, then you're supposed to be fine. And you're just not. I mean, it's like, so to answer your question, no, I don't think people talk to me about grief. I think, my mom talked to me and still will talk to me a lot about like feelings surrounding it. So, I mean, I think we've gotten a lot better over the years. I also feel like at that time, we still felt like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to bring it up to make other people sad, or I don't want to share what's inside me. And it's just like, why? Why not? Everyone's thinking something about it. Everyone's feeling something about it. Who you're just supposed to, the expectation is just to keep it inside. That doesn't make any sense. It'll just manifest in more negative ways as you move forward.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm sorry about your rabbits and your grandpa and your grandma. And like, I think loss as a child is so confusing and
absolutely.
devastating. Yeah. And my sister had a pet rabbit. It was so devastating when Blackie, she wants to acknowledge that it was a different time. The rabbit was black. She was so devastated when Blackie died that not only did she stay home from school, but my mom had to take a day off work.
Mm,
Like loss is devastating. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, what's really great now is that we're having these conversations. There's documentaries like, the one you put out. We are finding the tools, learning the tools, teaching the younger generation the tools. So grief can be part of this conversation. And I actually had a meeting earlier and I wrote down something that came to mind, that grief is a privilege. Grief is a privilege
Interesting.
because I believe we grieve because we love.
Hmm.
To love is to have grief, is part of having love in your life. And I think knowing that your love doesn't change, but but the relationship to the person might.
Yeah, I was talking with Jana de Cristofaro, who's in the film as well. She works at the Dougie Center, and she hosts a great podcast, Grief Out Loud. So check that one out. I think it was her that I was telling to, like, when I started the documentary, I was like trying to define grief, and we can get to that in a second. But I remember thinking like, well, like if someone wanted to avoid grief, how do you do it? And I came up with, you never love anyone or anything, or you just get out of town as soon as possible. And like neither one of those seemed like good options.
Mm-mm.
So we endure, I guess.
I mean, it's the full human experience.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it seems like it's like I think she said this too once, which was like grief, like love is not promised, but grief is, and it should almost be the other way around. It's like grief should be like the optional thing, and love should be promised in our lives.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, imagine. And like also like grief is so painful that love should feel like the complete opposite, but love has the spectrum of feelings with it.
Yeah. It's
We're just,
so deeply complex and
it's
nuanced.
I hate grief. I mean, it's a privilege, yes, but like I fucking hate it. Like it's just the worst. It's interesting. You're when you were just talking about your grandma dying at 15. So actually today recording this, is March 4th. It would have been my aunt's birthday. My
Mm,
aunt, my mom's oldest sister, passed away from ovarian cancer when I was 21. And I was in the room with her at the hospital when she took her last breath. And like in Judaism, we do, the Shiva and like there's these beautiful traditions, but no one really talked to us, the nieces and the nephews, about grief. And this was my first like grief that like I remember really affecting me because right away after that I went to like party in Greece. I was 21, so I went to party in Greece with
mhm.
like my friend and I just remember feeling so sad and off and like I can't have fun, I'm sad, but like not really tying it to like, oh, my aunt just died.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of
It's
weird in hindsight to know, like, oh, like I was really because I was close with my aunt and I watched her die and
yeah.
no one talked to me about it. And it wasn't because no one wanted to, but maybe because it wasn't something that people did 20 years ago.
Yeah, it 20 years ago, I think there was certainly like we approached it differently. It was just a very like, I'm sorry for your loss. My
Thank you.
condolences.
Thank you.
Like that's what people would do
Yeah.
then,
Oh, I thought you were telling me you're sorry for
I
my loss. I'm
no
like,
no
thank you.
no no no, I'm saying it was just like they
Yeah.
first of all, let's back up. I am sorry that you had to go through that experience.
Yeah.
I am. I'm saying at the time,
Yeah.
I
That's
think
all
it
you
was just
did.
like that's all someone would say. And then they would just say like my condolences and then move on. And it was like, well, I said what I needed to say and they should be fine in a couple months.
Yeah.
And I think especially too with like nieces and nephews, like that relationship, I don't think we think of it as a major grief like the way we should. Like I had a similar situation. My mom's brother passed, and he was like the cool uncle, you know? And it was like towards the tail end of making this film, like the film coming out, and I remember learning about anticipatory grief and how, and we talk about it in the Julie Shaw talks about it. Dr. Julie Shaw, who's on the poster, um, talks about anticipatory grief. And I remember this like super meta world I was in where it was like I was learning about it, showcasing it in the film, and also having it myself, experiencing anticipatory grief myself, which was just so challenging, you know. And like you were saying, like she was take like you were there when she took her last breath, so you probably had understandably had feelings leading up to that point, you know.
It was, yeah, it was just, it was just one of those things where like didn't know what I was walking into. Like I knew she was dying. We got called to the hospital, but like I've never watched someone die.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting, yeah, that's an interesting one.
And
Watching someone, it's almost in a way, I don't want to say beautiful, but
no, it
there's
is.
some beauty in being with them in their last moment on this earth, a
Mhm.
moment in time that will never happen again, and you're part of it. It-
Um,
it's a privilege in a way.
I'm glad that the first person that I got to witness take their last breaths wasn't my mom or dad because
Mhm.
kind of felt more prepared for that like specific scenario.
Yeah.
And when our mom died, it was very peaceful, 2:55 a.m., like took her last breath, her head rolled over, her eyes opened, and a tear just dripped right out. And it was a really beautiful, sad moment, but it was beautiful. Like she went very peacefully. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's interesting because like all we had it to compare it to was our aunt taking her last breath. But I know not everyone has a peaceful ending. Like there's people who die quite tragically. And
Yeah.
like I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. I mean, like the best I mean, if I could choose my death, which I can with maid stuff, but it would be to go peacefully in my sleep.
Mhm.
And I think that itself is a very beautiful thing that like it is something where the family could be there and it, you go on. And yeah, grief and like that's just like the beginning. That's just the beginning of like a whole shitstorm that grief unleashes. Where where do you think the intersection is between resilience and grief?
So that is so interesting to me. By the way, I should have said at the very beginning, like, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not some grief expert that has all the answers for everyone. However, I'm someone who does see the value in having these hard conversations. And as we talked about the other day, I think having long form conversations, exploring the nuances of grief is really where we could find healing and know that we are part of something, a bigger community of people together, and we're all more connected than we think we are. Um, so getting back to your question, um, it's interesting because I've heard so many stories and I've experienced like things myself where people will tell you, I know that this situation is going to make you stronger. And I'm like, stronger for what? The next time my mom dies, or the next time, like, people are like, stronger for the next time my wife leaves, or the next time I'm, like,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because I don't know where it's coming from. And at like, and at different times in my life, I'm like, why do I need be strong for what? Like, why do I need to be strong right now? You know? But then you realize, like, you live through this. Like, you survive is an interesting kind of word to use, but you survive these things that you didn't think you were going to be able to move forward through and with, and you realize that it gave you grit and it feels good. And it's interesting how you can now approach different things in your life in a much different way than you normally would. Um, like I like rarely like I don't know, like when I'm driving, like I rarely like I don't honk my horn at anyone when I'm driving, like because I just like don't care enough unless it's like and like I'm someone who uses a horn in his vehicle when like to alert a driver that they're about to do something very
Or
wrong or
like, don't
dangerous.
hit me. Ah!
Yeah. Yeah. Not to be like, "Hey, pal," like and then get into some,
Yeah.
you know. But I think stuff like that, it just like it like kind of reframes the way you view the world. I think that
Mhm.
resilience like gets built through grief and it allows you to approach different things in your life in a much different way than you probably would have done before.
So true. And like I like to say that we all have a resilience muscle and you can't see it, but we all have it. We're born with it. And like any muscle, there are things that you can do to make it stronger. And you can be proactive. So when life gets hard, you have tools to move through that challenge faster. But
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that when a challenge is thrown your way, you don't have it and you're not using it. And so, and it's all like a spectrum because some people are born into a very hard, difficult life and they have to make hard decisions and use their resilience muscle all the time. Some people walk through life and don't have to really think about it till they're later
Is
in life and like what a privilege.
isn't that interesting though? Like I have a friend where I'm just like, oh man, they just can't catch a break, huh? Like it's just like one thing after another. And it's not even necessarily like always grief per se, but like now their car broke down and now they can't get, or now they like can't afford to fix something, or
Mhm.
just like all these like mini setbacks, like one after another. Um, and at the same time, it's like how can you use those situations as setups for something bigger as you
Yeah.
move forward? How can you reframe it, perhaps? Um, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have all the answers, but it does certainly make you think.
Yeah. I mean, no one has all the answers, but I think that's why these conversations, your documentary, your podcast are so important because someone might hear something and it inspires them to take something from there that is the answer that they need.
That's the one thing that if I could do anything with that movie, it was that I wanted someone to walk out of watching that film and saying, I didn't know that I could view it that way. Or I never thought of it that way. Now I
Mhm.
can think of it that way. Or just get validate. I tell people too, like I'm like when people ask me like, "Oh, is the movie sad?" And I say that's such an interesting question because you're probably sad about your own grief, rightfully so. And so it might bring up
Yeah.
some of your own feelings, and it also might make you feel validated. Like I want people to feel like it's all those things that you were feeling, they're perfectly normal. And chances are other people have felt very similar feelings as well.
Mhm.
And so I just want people to know that like this is a very normal human experience. And it's okay.
And it is okay. And it's okay to not feel okay, but you are going to walk through this life and experience griefs, many griefs, and different versions of it, and different, every grief is so different.
Yeah.
And so you have this documentary, you have this podcast. What's next for you? Are you going to make more documentaries? Are you going to make a movie? Like
Yeah, I want
a
to.
with actors? What are you gonna
Yeah,
do?
I mean, I mean, that was like my first, my like my degree is in theater. So I do like musicals and, a lot of theater, stage and acting. And I haven't been doing film and TV acting as much. I want to get back into that space a lot more. And, um, yeah, I mean, yes, to answer your question, like there is another documentary that I want to do. Um, I want to explore like different types of grief more. I want to explore like having harder conversations with people more. That's what the podcast is. The podcast is like a spin-off from the film where I just sit with
Mhm.
like authors, actors, like um, comedians even, and just talk about their, their the heart the lower times and like what they did and how they made meaning. I want to show people that like you can move forward through this. For me, like grief has shown me a whole other world that I didn't know existed of like people and places and things. Like people I did not know existed are now part of my life. And that is so beautiful. Um, and so to remember that like we only know what we know, but like we can in some ways get excited for what we don't know, you know? Like excited for the new adventures, excited for the new people that may come into our lives. And that doesn't mean that it erases that grief. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that like both can coexist, that you can have gratitude for new experiences and new people and also hold space for that grief. So yes, I do. I'm planning to do. My dream is to do like a rom-com, just like a silly, quirky 90-minute rom-com. So yeah, I'm well, and I'm going to be in The Wizard of Oz this May. They just announced I'm playing the Cowardly Lion, so I'm very excited to be back on the stage doing that. From one furry animal to another.
I love it. What do you think the biggest difference between, like for you, what's the biggest difference between the heart of the beast and the heart of the lion?
Oh man, that's a So the beast, so the beast is like so tender and he has such a good heart. And he does like I was telling who was I telling this to recently? I was telling Gina Moffa.
Yeah.
I was telling Gina Moffa this that he knows what he has to do. Like he knows he can't keep her there anymore. And I would get choked up every time I would have to do that scene because it was the grief of like letting her go. And he knows that that's like what's best for her. And he wants so bad to tell her that he loves her, but he knows that if he says that, she's going to stay and that wouldn't be right for her. And he just tells her to go. And it's like that scene on stage was like so hard to play. Because like you pull from like real life experiences too when like for me at least like when you act and like I think I've been able to incorporate like those griefy moments in my life into like characters like that. Um, so there are kind of similarities though, now that you mention it, because they both want to put on this like tough exterior, but they're really actually like good-hearted people. Which kind of just speaks to like 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 a lot of guys in grief. Like we're like expected to like put on this like tough exterior. And I'm like, I was telling Ryan Sickler the other day, I was like, hey, like it's okay, like not telling him, I was telling him like how in general, like it's okay for us as guys to cry. It's okay for us as guys to have feelings,
Hmm.
you know? And so that's like part of what with the movie too. It's like part of what I want to do is just like let other guys like me know that that's okay.
Yes. Yes. And you know what I like to say? You shouldn't hold in your pee and you shouldn't hold in your feelings.
Yeah, that's true.
Not good for
Yeah,
you.
both of those can be very very bad for you in the long run.
I think it's going to be really interesting, like as now that we are friends and I stalk you, how playing the Cowardly Lion's going to unfold. And like I'm interested in like when the run of this, is it called a run? When the show is done,
Yeah.
really seeing like learning more about the resemblance of those two characters because we know what Disney shows us or what we know of them, but you playing both of them and embodying them, it's going to be really interesting to see where that intersection is about, you know, their personalities and their soul experiences. I was going to say human experience, but that they're not human. But you are human.
He the beast becomes human.
Oh, yes, right.
Um,
I haven't seen that movie in a very long time.
and he sings in the show on stage, the stage version, he sings this beautiful song, um, which everyone that knows me knows it's my favorite song. It's called If I Can't Love Her. And there's one part that like he says, no passion could reach me, no lesson could teach me. And it was like, it's so sad because he was so stubborn that like nothing could get through to him. And now she's gone. Like now it's ruined forever for him. Or at least he thinks so at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's to me like that's about like having that humility and being able to be introspective while we still can,
Mhm.
you know, because you don't know what can happen. You don't know what's going to come next. And so you don't want to lose something that could potentially be beautiful and wonderful for you.
Good life lesson right there.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
Okay, you know what, we're wrapping up. So, a couple things. One, everyone, his links are in the show notes. Go check him out. Go follow him. Watch Meet Me Where I Am. Um, before I let you go,
Yeah.
share a piece of advice with our listeners from what you've learned mixed with your personal experience to someone who might be stepping into a very complex, deep grief.
I cannot stress this enough. You have to give yourself space to feel the feelings as they come up in those moments. I know it is not convenient. I know it can happen when we're at work or we're driving and we hear a song or something. It's so important to set aside that time to feel it when it comes up. And just like, like for me, like I know I would excuse myself and I'd go somewhere else in a corner in a bathroom,
Hmm.
cry for a minute, cry for 5 minutes, and kind of like reset. Like it's really important to like take those breaks because it's so overwhelming, especially in the beginning. It's with you every second, every day. And I know it sounds cliche, but like you really do have to take it moment by moment
Hmm.
because the way you're feeling right now, you are not going to feel like that an hour from now, 2 hours from now, a day from now. Um, and one other thing to remember that kind of on that same note is um, Cynthia O'Neill says this in the film. She says, I cannot promise you anything about grief, but 1 year from now, you're not going to feel the same that you feel sitting in this chair right now. And I think that's really true. It changes. It will change. You will change.
That's beautiful. And I echo it. From personal experience, like after the miscarriage, Dave died and my mom died, the pain was so intense. Like, I was just like, I can't live like this. And I only had a few friends at the time who lost parents, and I called them, and the common advice was time. You will start to not feel so much pain. You just need time.
Yeah, I mean, it goes from you're thinking about it 1,000 times a day to 999 times a
Yeah.
day,
Only a
and so that's
thousand?
progress.
Only 1,000 times? I love that. And you're just so amazing. And I am grateful to be in the grief sphere with you. And I love what you are doing. And I love the tone that you bring to the conversations. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I don't know what I do or what I'm doing, but I hope it's somewhat helpful.
Yes, you do. You know what you're doing. And you know what? I never know where I am or what I'm doing. I build my plane while I fly it. And like maybe you are too. And that's okay.
Well, and that's why it's important to meet each other where we are.
And on that note, thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana, but no Alana, just Grant Garry, the one and only. Let us be that lighthouse in that storm for you. You are not alone. You do not have to go through the hard shit in life alone. Let us hold your hand. It's okay to not be okay. Just remember, you are resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are Resilient AF.